Good morning, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Welcome to another episode of What Now Irishman. My conversation partner today is a man named PJ Crenim. You probably recognize him for some very passionate speeches over the last few days. I'm going to bring him up. He was involved heavily in the recent cost of living and fuel protests. So I'm going to bring him in and I'm going to put the question to him. PJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Kate.
Not too bad. I'm just going to throw it straight at you. What now, Irishman?
Yeah. What now? Oh, there's a question. Right. Well, let's look at it strategically. You have immediate, short, mid, and long term. Immediate term, what do we do? Well, people are trying to keep going as they can, and we know that under the cost of living crisis at the moment, unless we all had a money tree in the back garden, none of us would be able. And people are cutting their cloth to their measure. And unfortunately, we're even way beyond where people would be using the phrase cutting luxuries and stuff like that. Anecdotally, from speaking to people, because I'm living here in North Cork, and it is one of the more deprived constituencies, rural constituencies in the country, what I'm hearing anecdotally is that for people on social welfare, of which I've talked to two people now in the past 2 days. Number one, they're having to cut back for themselves. And what I mean by cutting back for themselves is they're doing without food to feed their children. On the other side, then, the other person has some medical issues and is awaiting being seen by the necessary community services that exist but don't exist because of waiting lists. And these are the realities that people are living with, and that's in the immediate term. In the short term, what do we do? In the short term, we have to start looking at the council elections, and a real alternative has to be given to people. Then we'll move to the midterm, which would be the government elections. And the long term is simply fulfilling the terms of the Constitution, where children of the country are cherished equally, where people are able to live rather than exist, and that the system that is there to aid them rather to be adversarial. There are some very high notions. And to some people, they will say, I'm really struggling in the here and now. And it's true. But unless people stand up, it's the same is going to continue.
Yeah. So you've talked solely in we'll say political terms and political solutions there. Do you still believe that the system we have is fit for purpose?
No, we have a political system which is transitory, but unfortunately the main parties have policies and personalities within them that are part of the problem. And even if the government changes, the civil service stays there forever. And as well as that, then you have the adjunct services of the state. I'll take into example Bus Éireann today. Article in the Irish Independent, they're talking about cutting 3 rural services. Well, they're actually from large centres of population to large centres of population, from Wexford to Waterford, for example, from Galway to Dublin. And they serve smaller villages along the route. And when you cut the access to transport for people who do not and cannot afford their own private transport, that brings in real hardship. Our post offices at one time were a social service. We all were guaranteed that in every village in Ireland there was a post office. I don't need to say the blatantly obvious, which is that every village post office, more or less, is either shut down or closing down in real terms. And between the systemic system that is there politically and the adjunct, some fundamental, realistic, total change needs to happen, a root and branch review. Even one last part, it's just something I gave somebody assistance on, community welfare. They had an unexpected expense. They didn't know how to sort it. They're on social welfare. I gave them a hand. And where normally they would have gone to the community welfare officer in the local health centre, which was the last time they had to do it, which was a couple of years ago, all that is now pulled back from these community health centres operated by the HSE and centralised, for example, in Cork and Kerry, it's centralised in an office in Little Island. They want you to go online and download a form. They want you to supply stuff from, we say, our bank account, downloading it online, printing it off, and sending it off to them for someone faceless to deal with. The old system used to be you went in and you met a person. You told them what was wrong, and you received understanding and compassion. And it was a very good system. And now they've created something monolithic, faceless, bureaucratic, and for elderly. I mean, there's some of them are not very technological off, which is what I was helping with. So I was assisting them with downloading the stuff that they needed and preparing it and stuff like that. And you'll probably say to me, why are you doing that? Isn't there bound to be somebody for that? The citizens' information, we say, for example, the person didn't have time. The person didn't have the capacity to be able to go to the local office, which is 25 miles away. They didn't have their own transport. And as well as that, there was their own dignity as well at cost. They didn't want to be sat out in a waiting room and then speaking in an area which is actually a kind of a common area and is cubicalized, but still, voices carry. At least in the old system, there was privacy, there was dignity, and there has been this erosion, this societal erosion. I talk about the drone society, and I mentioned it last Saturday, where they want you to go out, work till you drop, and literally they prefer that you ever passed away before they ever had to pay you out a pension. The personality, the personableness, and the holisticness of our society is being eroded to a factor where something is really, really fundamentally wrong in this country. And to say that this is the actual existing system just shows that it's just so wrong. And, it's like they would say about rice, eat rice, 1 billion Chinese can't be wrong. As well as, if so many people are saying this, and if so many people are suffering in silence, they can't all be wrong. They can't all be wrong. I'm only hearing what I hear, how I hear it, with helping where I can, when I can, and how I can. We have an old saying, I came into this world kicking and screaming. I am probably going to go the same way. But if during my time there, I can help and make things better for other people, well, that's what you do. That's what you do, We also have rule number 10. Money's like diarrhea. You're often happier without it. But, not all. Some rules are meant to be broken.
I think of all the sins and all the wrongs of man, I believe greed is the worst. I believe greed causes harm and chaos. And I'm very happy with my simple little life. I don't care about things. I have enough. I don't want more. I work less than I ever had in my life, but I still work and I still pay my bills and cover everything and stuff like that. But I have better things to do with my time than just be the drone that as you said there.
Yeah.
The system. If you could pinpoint when did this change? I grew up in I don't know. I'm in my kind of late enough 40s. Could you pinpoint in your life?
55, so I grew up in a recession in the 70s. I've been through the one in the 70s. I was through the enormous explosion of wealth in the 90s. Well, I say explosion of wealth. The explosion of exchange of money, because debt increased manifold. I've been through the crash in 2008. I reckon I'm going to be facing into another crash. If you were to say, when did things start to go wrong? I reckon 2019 was the last normal year I had. And by that, I mean quality of life. And we'd say the system, from my interactions with it having the ability to be tailored to the individual's needs. And then we had the 3 years that we all can't talk about. And now we're coming out of it. And what got bedded in there in those years has now become part of a new sub-foundation of culture. And I think it's wrong. I really and truly think it's wrong. Man is not determined by the quality or the quantity of his bank balance. Man is determined by the quality of his life. And everybody has a right to a good life balance and a good quality of living and a good standard of living. Simple things like a door to call your own. Security of a place to live. The feeling that you need not worry about where your next loaf of bread is coming from. That if you're working, you can take time off for emergencies and you can take time off for holidays, and that you're respected in the job that you do. Unfortunately, these days, there seems to be a bit of a run to the bottom in employment, in standards now. I'm really seeing in the last while where it's work, be there. If you're not there, are you really our person? Do you share our culture? Well, if your culture is exploitation, then my answer would be no, I don't share your culture. My culture is mutual respect, Sorry, are we all right there now?
So about 20 the last year, I would agree with you 100 as the planet. Like COVID was a huge wealth transfer. There was a huge transfer of power. And there was a huge transfer of responsibility. I feel like humans, our ability to create our own destiny was taken away from us in the period. A lot of people don't realize it. We have the government now pushing this digital ID, and you spoke about people having to go to centres and send emails and stuff. You're going to have to use this ID now to access services, which means you're going to have to give up the last little bit of freedom that you have. Is it by design?
I think it is. I think it is by an overarching design of control. Now, the thing about this digital ID and the internet bill, or the AI bill, is that all of this will not be dealt with Trumpatically, in Trumpism terms. It will not be a big, beautiful bill, as that orange fella does. This will be death by 1,000 cuts, hidden in every government department, by adjusting legislation, by amendment, to facilitate this. And in that case, you are really facing not so much an army over ground as almost dealing with the rats in the sewer coming up to threaten you behind the walls, the last walls that you hold. It will spread, it will be lodged in legislation dealing with education, finance, health, transport, housing, justice, everything. And we already had with the card for social welfare services, the DPS card, and the Irish Council of Civil Liberties already expressed severe misgivings regarding the use of that. And then they came out and they said, well, it's obligatory, but it's not mandatory. Yeah, I mean, we have mental verbal gymnastics. I'm sorry. I'm a blacksmith. I deal in yeses and no. I either hit the steel right with the hammer or I don't. It's as simple as that. And things in life are simple, yes and no's in very many parts. And unfortunately, trying to get a straight answer out in relation to this is remarkably difficult. I've been sent stuff by a friend of mine who's very involved in that campaign, or by actually a relative of my partner's. And I started reading into it. I'm autistic. I can speed read. I can take in very large volumes of information in one sitting from beginning to end, maybe a couple of hours, but I can research what would take other people a couple of days. And I walked away with my face white because of what I saw. I mean, people talk about China being totalitarian, facial recognition, the whole lot, social credit score and everything. This is laying the foundation for it. This is laying the foundation for it, this. And I don't trust the people that are running the system. It's like the old question of energy security in Ireland. Do you think nuclear power is good? In theory, yes. Practically, no. Why is your answer practically no? Have you seen the people running the country? Have you seen the people that give the lowest quotes and it massively expands afterwards to unintended consequences? So no, I don't. I'm erring on the side of caution. And unfortunately, I think we're going down a route here which has been very well concealed and will be announced with great fanfare when Ireland takes up the presidency of the EU, and Irish people will suddenly turn around and go, literally, they'll have a WTF moment. But I'm not going to what that, and I'm not going to finish that.
Oh, you can curse. Listen. This is the free speech platform. You can curse all you want. And I was actually reading.
They'll just go, what the fuck, like, and
I was reading.
And the implications will scare them, and it will be in the first 6 months, which Ireland only has it for 6 months. People will come out of it going into Christmas, and I don't think mentally they're going to be in a good place.
So you've touched on a lot of stuff there. Go back to
your audio there is breaking up a little bit.
Energy security and power. Technically, Ireland should be a nuclear reactor.
Your audio is breaking up.
Not dangerous. It's actually exceptionally safe, and the people to understand is. Okay, are we back? Yeah, it's very strange because I don't normally have connection issues, but we're definitely having a few. No, I was just saying that in reality, from an energy security point of view, we should have gone nuclear in the early 2000s, because that station would just be coming into operation now. We could say, given the country we live in, it probably spiraled into something like the Children's Hospital, and it probably wouldn't have been fit for purpose. But we could be energy secure with one small micro reactor in the country. People don't understand what nuclear. Yeah, but people don't understand what nuclear power is. It's steam power. It's steam turning turbines.
It is heating water to spin hydroelectric turbines with steam. But people don't even realize. Take for example the incinerator for Ringaskiddy, that was proposed by Indover. That incinerator I was actually living in Ringaskiddy. The reason I moved to North Cork was my now ex-wife, God rest her soul, came from Middlesbrough, lived with the experience of British Steel and incinerators up there, and had seen what it does to the environment, and said, if that's coming in, we're getting the hell out. Which was a great surprise to me, but life changes. But that incinerator that was coming in, the chemical factories down below there, Pfizer's, Novartis, SmithKline Beecham, they all have their own incinerators. They are all run to their standards, which are internationally compliant because they are multinational companies. They have to invoke best practices, which are constantly striving to do better. The majority of the waste that was going to be going into the Indover site was actually chemical waste. There was no functional need to build that incinerator there because there were already 5 incinerators, 5 smaller incinerators running quite well in those factories in Ringaskiddy. That was a purely commercial decision that was made by Indover to come in and say, well, if it costs you X amount of money to treat your waste, what we're going to do is we're going to treat that for you for X divided by 2. And you send your waste down to us, and we're going to process it, and aren't you getting more profits? And they'll get a skim off the top. It's like the counting room in Goodfellas with the mafia. They'll take a skim off the top, and management fellas come out with lovely bonuses and everything. But they're running it for profit. When anything is run for profit rather than backed up international best practice, unfortunately standards slip. And environmentally, you only get one planet to live on. We're one country, one small little piece of we're one small little piece of strata above the water on one little rocky ball, in the galaxy. And you can't forget that we're very small in the big scheme of things. But if something happens a mile down the road from you and it's environmentally changing, what are you going to do if your house is there? So this country is run backwards, inside out, and upside down.
Has it always been? Has it always been like this since the formation of the state?
No,
can you hear me?
Audio is gone.
Can you hear me now?
No,
you're paused there for me. What I'm going to do is
my audio is fine.
I'm just going to drop you down and bring you back in and just see.
I think you put yourself on mute, did you?
Now I'm going to just remove.
I'm backstage
now. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
No, you're still on mute. I can't hear you. And I haven't changed my sound settings, and I'm okay.
Yeah, 1 second now. I can hear you fine.
There we go. I've got you there now.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. There's just I'm not sure why. There's just a little bit of delay sometimes, and your video is a little bit out of sync. I'm not sure if it's my end, but it shouldn't be. But anyway, look, we'll plow on. This is the delightful thing of doing stuff like this. Is all the mistakes get left in as well, and all the pauses of the sound.
This is live. Yeah.
It makes it more human and real. So look, I've seen you speak. I'll be honest, Chip. The reason I wanted to talk to you when I saw you in Cork, and I went over to you, is I got sent. It was actually my mother, believe it or not, sent me the video clip of you speaking in Dublin, and went, "You need to talk to this guy." And I sat back and watched it, and that was one of the most passionate bits of it wasn't a speech. It was just words that had emotion and meaning and truth.
I was only speaking for lads that couldn't be there. That's literally my only motivation that day.
So talk to me. We'll kind of go back to the start and go back to Whitegate. We'll go back to the cost of living protest, and then what led you up to Dublin. So just tell the people how you got involved in that and how all that came to pass.
My buddy Anthony Kelleher is a good friend of mine. Anthony and I were both in Sinn Féin. We both left Sinn Féin at the same time. And Anthony, there was talk of the costs of the few protests, and Anthony talked to another few lads and said, right, there's one place in this county, in Cork, that if a couple of us went down, we might just last a few hours. But I think we'll stir some waves and maybe create some media interest. And by media interest, then we might start discussion on this whole thing and bring the cause to light. And Anthony was the first truck in. There was about 6 lads. Anthony was the first truck in and parked across the road. And I mean sideways across the road. And there was a couple of lads on tractors and that. And they thought they'd last about 4 hours. And they were there for about 4 or 5 days. And that scared the government. It ended up, I talked to various people around the place. I've had a kind of a unique history, and sometimes I don't even leave my yard. News comes into me. And news came into me that the public order unit were going to be gathered, and every guard in the country was going to be gathered at Thomond Park in Limerick, and that they were going to divide out into, we'll say, thirds. 1/3 will go down to Foynes, 1/3 will go to Galway, 1/3 will go to Cork, and they were going to remove the protesters. I was left in fairly clinical terms as to what remove would mean. I knew that in that case, you've got some fairly determined men, which now numbered about 1,000, and a hell of a lot of heavy vehicles down below there. I had seen a kind of a drone's eye view of what was there, and I just went, oh, sugar, this is not going to end well. So I knew Anthony was my friend. I literally said, Anthony, I'm coming down. So I was a medic. I was a medic abroad for years. I have 2 trauma kits and a multiplicity of first aid kits in the workshop, but 2 full trauma kits made up that would deal with everything up to small minor operations. I literally grabbed one, threw stuff in a bag, threw in cans of Monster Mango Loco, threw in about 4 packets of cookies, threw in spare tobacco, papers and filters, and went to my partner. I'm going. Where are you going? I'm going to Whitegate. Oh, yeah. Okay. When you be back? I don't know. What's going on? I think something wrong is going to happen. Okay. I said, is Paddy going to be all right? Can you sort it out? Don't I always, says she. And I got on the 8:20 train on the Saturday, and I went down to Middleton, where I actually saw, we say, minibuses of guards going left and right around the place. And I started messaging Anthony saying, right, I see so many van loads of guards heading down that direction. And it turned out I was telling them what they needed to know, because they were behind the barriers then, and Whitegate had been closed down. I was in Middleton. Whitegate was about 13k away, and I had 2 options: either get there on foot or find another way down. So I took the bus down. I turned the trauma kit bag, upside down in the seat next to me, so all you could see was the shoulder straps. And I'm not going to say how I got down through 4 checkpoints, but let's just say that there are some very understanding unionized semi-state workers in this company in transport, and they were that vocal out through the side window that I actually got walked through 3 sets of barricades once I pointed to a certain house, saying I've been building in Dublin all week. All I want to do was see my family and wash me dirty clothes, at which I was backed up behind me. Yeah, and his bloody clothes are stinking up my bus. And got down there and found Anthony within about 15 minutes and tapped him on the shoulder. How are you, kid? And he was just, how in the name of Christ did you get in here? I said, front door. What? And so I explained myself, and then I had to explain myself again to the other lads, to which they started rolling around the floor almost laughing. And I just went, I think something's going to go wrong here today. So if it does, I said, just roar for me. And it was just as well, because it did happen. And I had no more than 2 bottles of water on me at the time. And then they pepper sprayed them, but I know how to treat pepper spray. And a woman came up out of a house and gave me baby wipes. And then people started taking bottles, empty bottles that I'd found, and refilling them off their own bottled water, because in Whitegate you can't drink the water. The Ishkaran water, it actually gives you diarrhea. There you go. And they started refilling the bottles for me, and I was literally telling people, make your way back to the Orange House. I will be there and I'll treat you. And I would treat one, and then I'd turn around to him and just go, here's 2 bottles of water, here's some wipes. Now you know how to treat the next guy next to you. And then I'd skip 3 down, and then I started again. And so I was teaching people to do what they need to do. In other words, learn one, see one, teach one. And yeah, it was, I mean, we were lucky that there was, I mean, they went through.
I've experienced a lot of what you're talking about there. I've been to so many protests over the years, and one of the marches we did on the Dáil in the past, I did the same thing. I carry a full medical kit in the car. I've got sterile. Like a lot of people don't know this. There's loads of companies out there that a lot of medical gear has best before dates on it, and a lot of companies chuck them away, and they just put them in the bin. They're there to be taken, and it doesn't matter that they're out of date. Exactly. You can stockpile these. I'd have an awful lot of sterile eye washes. I carry them with me in the car all the time. So I buy them in bulk, and they're there. And I suppose you should be telling everybody that invest in a good pair of goggles, just the rubber lined goggles that will just protect your eyes. It's still going to get in your nose and your mouth, but it's the eyes you need to protect, because even if you're having difficulty breathing.
I was actually saying to myself, why didn't I stop off the €2 shop in Middleton and buy myself some swimming goggles? At the time, they're now in a kit that's there for it. But just the fact alone of having a kit for that says a hell of a lot about the possible community interaction at protests with Gardaí. Make of that what
On
you will.
Garda Síochána, let's talk about them. Okay. I put out a video on social media there quite recently, a couple of weeks ago, and I've said, and I stand by this, the corporate employees of Garda Síochána, because they are corporate employees, have no jurisdiction over me. None whatsoever. And I can quite happily say that I have no interest in interacting with them, and I don't want them to come near me because they're corporate employees. Now, I can say that because I'm not a criminal. I don't break the law, and I've always, my entire life, kept up my end of the social contract.
Exactly. Very simple.
So it's very easy for me to say, no, corporate employee, go away. Simple as that. And I think everybody needs to take that approach. Now, if you're a criminal, then the guards can investigate your criminality and send files to the DPP. But outside of that, they can't do anything.
They can't. It's like this thing of the bear. It's like this thing of the bear in the woods. This stupid old question that was going around the place. Women, would you prefer a man or the bear in the woods? Oh, I'll take the bear in the woods. Do you know? And you know what the bear is going to do. Pretty much like. I mean, men can choose to do things. We just choose not to because we've got a sense of right and wrong and morality and ethics, I have seen the guards, unfortunately, now in 18 years, which is the length of time from birth to voting age. I have seen the guards back up Northern Irish thugs on behalf of the banks, seeing people get assaulted, and the guards stood idly by while that happened, while their houses were repossessed. Some in very questionable circumstances, as some of the activists who are still working away in the background have said and have proved. And now, 18 years later, I see them do this. From me personally, and I know guards, I take a very simple viewpoint on it. Unfortunately, I softened in 18 years. My resolve has now hardened. It will not be for changing. I will not interact with them, socially even, because my viewpoint is, my father used to have a saying, everyone has a price, but sometimes you'll be disappointed in life by how low some people's price is. Those lads might do that job for 40 hours, but my reading of the situation is that those 30 pieces of silver that they get from the government are in their bank 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And with decisions, there are consequences, intended and unintended. Maybe an unintended consequence for them is that if they encounter me in some situation, I won't be on their side, or I won't be willing to interact with them or anything like that. Now, if a person is after getting injured or something like that, of course I would. But I would be more concerned about the person than I would be about them or their process. But people need to remember that. They need to remember that those same guards who were young guards sent out there in 2008, 2009 and 2010 are now the guards of rank. And they're sergeants, assistant superintendents, detectives, maybe further up the chain even. Those guards are now running the organisation. And I think they really know themselves. They know this in their heart and soul as human beings, that they need to sort out their own system. And you have two choices in life. You either decide to do right or you don't. I realise they have mortgages and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I ain't going to be interacting with them, and that's not going to change from now on.
No, it's good. It's a good stance to take, and as I said, we can both say this because we kept up our end of the social contract, so to speak. We didn't break it. The state and their minions did. You mentioned Sinn Féin. Do you mind talking about that? Is it a sore subject? Is it?
No, that's not sore for me because it's in the past, and you can't change the past. Never regret what you've spent, as I say. As I say to every Dunn's employee when they ask me if I want the receipt when I do the shopping. We were both in Sinn Féin, myself and that buddy of mine. And one of the officers took an image from his personal Facebook page, altered it, and then made an issue out of nothing. He actually even apologized where he didn't need to, because he just went, right, lads, we're trying to bring about change in this country. We can either start going down the road of attacking each other, or we can start moving on and being practically changing things and what have you. So he even apologized for something he didn't need to apologize for. He still got a knife stabbed in his back by what I would term a kangaroo court of the Cuiga, which would be the provincial council, and the Court of County, the county board as such, to the point where a senior Republican politician who would have been on both sides of the fence, as in Provisional IRA and Sinn Féin, rang me on a Friday night after he was told at 7 o'clock that he was gone. That person rang our house phone on its little portable unit on the landline at 8 o'clock and first got in contact with my partner, who was the co-treasurer of the Common. If you reverse your resignation, which we had both tendered, we will assist you in getting services for your autistic son.
No way.
She told him where to stick it in the nicest way possible. She's courses a hell of a lot less than me. I do. To which case he said, well, what's PJ's position? Oh, he's out the front having a fag and a mug of tea. So the phone was handed out to me. And the same thing was said to me. And I said, no. I said, you're playing poker with the wrong fucker here, boy. I said, number one, I don't play poker because if I got a good hand, I'm going to show it. And when I'm pissed off, I'm going to show it. I said, I know where you basically are based. I said, I will find every boreen. I said, go through every boreen. I'll find you and I'll shove that phone up your arse. I said, don't you ever try and use my son as a bargaining chip. I mean, personally, I could never have looked any other parent of a special needs child or any other sibling of a special needs child in the eye again if I was to sell myself for 30 pieces of silver to hop myself over a waiting list for people who've been there longer and probably have worse conditions that they're dealing with than what I'm dealing with. Thankfully, I'm lucky. My partner has a business degree. She's literally trained herself to become a dietitian and almost a pediatric nurse. And I come from nursing in my background. So we're very lucky in that respect, that we're very much able to self-care in that. But that was proposed to me. And that showed me that literally what I was speaking to was something like a cult. And I just went, no, never again. And believe you me, I'll never get a legal letter about it because I'm telling the truth. And as well as that, I'd offer them a polygraph any day of the week because I know I'd pass it. And we parted company and not on good terms. And I said some fairly harsh things afterwards online, and every bit of it was the truth. And I got censored for it, and they wrote in the papers, in the Corkman about me, and what have you. And I will stand over it until the day I die on the decision I made. I will stand over it, no problem.
Cult is a very interesting word you've used there, because I don't know what happened to Sinn Féin. I too would have been a Sinn Féin voter going back a good few years, probably from about, we'll say the financial collapse onwards. I probably would have been a Sinn Féin voter up until we'll say the 2019, 2020 mark. But the shift, Republican socialism always existed, and people didn't possibly realize that Sinn Féin were always a socialist party. They obviously they were in position, so they would take opposing stances to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments. But at the core, they were socialist. They weren't Marxist. They were socialist. There's a huge difference. Yeah, they now seem to be completely Marxist and align closer to people before profit, who are out and out self-proclaimed Marxists, Labour and the Social Democrats. How, in your estimation, as somebody who was in there, so to speak, at certain stages of your life, how has that happened? Now, I understand cultural Marxism. It's one of my favorite topics of finding out and seeing what institutions it is infected and changes, we'll say, since all the way back to affirmative action in the 1960s. How and why did the middle of the road Sinn Féin party, the socialist
turn out the way it is now?
Yeah.
Well, look, I would have started out when I was 12 years of age, reading like Animal Farm, 1984. Then I would have moved on to Thomas More Utopia, stuff like that. So I've been kind of that mindset, questioning and explorative all my life in systems. What I see within the party now is that the people that join, are they Republican? No. Are they virtually interchangeable with the likes of PPP and on certain stances Fianna Fáil and even Fine Gael? Yeah, there. You really can't tell the difference between them. To the point where even at the Ardèche last weekend, one of the little things that snuck through the Ardèche was a vote on banning fox hunting, making fox hunting illegal. Now, I used to keep poultry. For years, I had a flock of about 150 birds and lived a very self-sufficient lifestyle before I moved to this exact house here, and kept goats and grew my own food and stuff like that, which I still do, a lot of vegetable gardening and that. But even just a little point like that, that shows a disconnect. That shows a disconnect between that party and the rural sector, because in the rural sector, the fox is not the farmer's friend. And for that to get scraped through by a narrow number of votes shows you that the demographics of the party has changed. From what I can see of Sinn Féin now, it's largely urbanised. It is largely young professionals. And it would be young professionals that would work with these. Not so much this, not so much this, but this. That's what they've got. They've got the fellas that literally, if you gave them a shovel, they'd look for the USB charging point on it. And are they any use if you had to change a tire? Probably bloody not. Do I think they are the people that will help really turn things around in the country? No, I really don't, you know. Where are they going to go from here? I think they're now committed to what I call the wokie-dokie pat. And I don't think they can get off it. And I think that's going to be to their detriment. But I think politics itself is being cheapened in this country across the road, across the board, in mainstream parties. And I think there's a radical reset needed, you know. So I think they're just one manifestation of a broken political system.
There's so that reset. Okay, so you've had in over the last, and I was involved in it myself. You've a load of across the board now. You've a load of these micro nationalist parties, we call them. Staunch nationalists. It goes all the way from ethno-nationalists, national socialists who are basically, you know what I mean, ethno-nationalists is not ethno-nationalists, they believe Irish people only, etc. You know what I mean? That's that all the way over to, you know, kind of where your centre used to be. You know what I mean? So you have they fight. I was guilty. I got pulled into this stuff myself. I had no interest in politics. That's not what I wanted to do. I got pissed off because I started life young. And I always say this, I was married, then my house bought when I was 23 years old, out of a bit of slog. Simple as that.
Yeah.
A few long hours, a few extra shifts. You know, and it was doable. For the most part, my wife didn't have to work. I was able to earn enough to keep roof over head, raise 3 kids to adulthood. My kids have nothing. They're all working.
Your kids will be resident with you, probably in their own bedrooms.
They're still there. They're still there.
They're still there. And when will they go?
They've nowhere else to go. They've nowhere to go. It's as simple as that. They all have money. They're all working, but they have nowhere to go. My eldest lad is 26 now. I know where he's going. And it's out of the country with his partner. They have money they can get set up.
Sorry, there, no sound has gone again.
And we should be back now.
Sound
Have
is
you got
gone
me?
again. Hold on there now. I'll see if this works. I'll just see if
Okay,
it's
we'll
me.
do the
It could be.
we'll do the jump down again and jump back in.
There we go. No. If you talk, I'll see if I
Can you
hear.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can
Perfect.
hear you.
That's grand. That's grand. That's grand. Yeah. Actually, look, the technology works 90% of the time. But
You were saying
what I was
about your
saying was,
26-year-old.
Look, still living at home. You know what I mean? And he isn't hoping getting a house, but himself and his partner are going to leave. That's what's going to happen.
It will happen. Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of our youth and our future leaving the country, and then we have this massive amount of inward immigration. That they said it in the Dáil. They want to increase the population to 10 million. They want to essentially double the population of the country. Without doubling infrastructure, industry, employment, services. So it's an absolute recipe for disaster. But we'll say before that we were talking about nationalist parties, and you have all these little micro parties that literally do nothing, only bicker amongst themselves and throw stones at each other and stuff like that. And I was involved in it. And then we had a movement of people, which was just people. They were from every political background. There was Fianna Fáil voters, Fine Gael voters, Sinn Féin voters, every kind of voter imaginable was there with their tractor and their truck. And I was in Foynes. I spent a couple of days up in Foynes. I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I don't have a large vehicle, so what I did was I do a lot of camping. I set up my stoves and I just made tea, and that was it for 2 days. Just you know what I mean? You're just trying to, but again, it gives you an opportunity to talk to people and have a conversation. And I spoke to Richard O'Donoghue from Independent Ireland and a few other lads and stuff like that. And from a political point of view, right, what you have to reach Middle Ireland and you have to reach the squeezed middle. So your people who are working will vote, right? There's a huge amount of people who aren't working, who are on various welfare schemes, etc., for various different reasons. We have a ton of different societal issues. Those people don't vote, and they don't, because I've crunched the numbers. I've done the numbers in the constituencies I ran in. They don't vote. How do you convince?
How do you convince them to vote?
Yeah, how do you convince them to get behind the likes of Independent Ireland or Into or?
It's like trying to how to fix the elastic band after it's been broken, do you know? And it's almost going to get to that situation. If I had the answer to that, and I had it in a bottle, I'd be flogging it into and Independent Ireland by the litre, and I'd be making fine money. Unfortunately, the reality is, while our population is increasing, the amount of voters as such, it occurs sporadically that there's an increase. The children's referendum, there was a 33% turnout. Now, if it was me, if I was God, I would have said, if you have under 60% or 65%, we'll say 2 and 3, don't turn out to vote, then I'm sorry, the whole thing fails. It neither passes nor fails. Unfortunately, and here's the one option that I've thought of, I think you're going to have to make a legal requirement for people to vote, whereby if you don't vote, there's going to be problems for you. No, that goes down an authoritarian version. It's kind of like the Velvet Glove, kind of part of Utopia with Thomas More, that everybody votes and what have you, but they know that if they don't vote, that literally their place in society is cut off. Unfortunately, if you ask people, a lot of them are going to say no. And then some of them are going to turn up, and some of them are going to vote for the exact same bullock in a suit that was there the last time. It's Ireland. You know, it's an Irish solution to an Irish problem. If we had it, we'd be bloody sorted and we'd be exporting it, you know?
Yeah. The growing parties that so look, I take it for granted you're no longer a Sinn Féin voter.
Okay.
But
no.
we started the conversation kind of, is there a political solution? Is there like, if you had to pin your colors to the mast, and you don't have to answer because it's not fair to put someone in that.
Oh, I can answer for you now. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah.
I would personally know Michael Collins, and I would know his brother Denny Collins very well. Denny owns the Boston Bar in Bantry. I'm originally from Bantry, and when I go back home, when I head west, as I always say, my first port of call after getting off the bus, because my partner keeps the car at home, obviously, with the kids, is I get off the bus stop and PJ goes straight up to town and straight up to the Boston Bar to Denny. And all you get is, PJ, you're back. Denny, I am. And sit down and talk to the lads and stuff like that. At the moment, Independent Ireland would be somebody that, through the actions that they've done, and I must look at the larger part of the actions, okay? They did back the government on a vote of confidence, all right? But everyone's entitled to a fucking hiccup. They did back that was the time of the Justice for Harvey. Now, personally, I would have said don't back the government, because there was very many more children than just Harvey. There were other children whose names, unfortunately, will not make the media, and they're in the exact same medical condition, and their families are going through the same hell of waiting for an operation for them. So on that regard, I wouldn't have agreed with them on that point. But overall, I would agree with them. For example, Michael has ran 160 plus buses to Northern Ireland where people can go, get on the bus. He's arranged a whole system whereby you can get a loan from your credit union to pay the money, so that you can get a cataract operation, a knee replacement, or a hip replacement done in I think it's the Beaconsfield Hospital in Northern Ireland. There's transport up and down, and the HSE then reimburses you with the money, and you reimburse the credit union. Now, to have that happen, I think, is a damning indictment on the HSE itself. But there I see a man trying to find a solution. Not a perfect solution, but trying to find a solution in regard to, we'd say, the Blackwater fish kill, which I was very involved in last summer. And I suppose that would have been the catalyst of me coming back into the political sphere again. Myself and two friends, there was two of us mainly, we sat outside the back of North Cork Creameries for 2 months, with our phones and with even infrared binoculars and stuff, because we're both ex-service and stuff like that. And we found 23 incidences of pollution in leading up to the fish kill, I might add, and immediately thereafter, of pollution into a tributary, the River Allow of the River Blackwater, 3 of them being absolutely top scale, 1 of them being actively hidden both by North Cork Creameries and the EPA. And the thing about it is that was confirmed in a phone call, which I recorded, in a meeting that I had with a member of the Cork EPA staff, where they admitted that this was a fault that occurred, and literally, it was just some fella left a valve open, and that should never have happened, and he tried to hide it afterwards. But they actually went and remediated the land by trying to turn it over to hide that. But that was when I came back into the political sphere. So Ken O'Flynn was fantastic assistance to us in that regard, to where he brought our concerns as locals regarding the fish kill and what happened straight to the Department of Climate, Energy, Environment. And through myself and the third member of our team, we actually wrote our own response to the interagency report. And we poked more holes in it than a Temu colander. And by their actions and what they've done to help us, I could do business with Independent Ireland, and I'd
agree with you. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, because, like I said, I would have been involved in the more extreme forms of nationalism. Now, you can't understand something until you're actually in it. So I had to get in it, and I got my hands very, very dirty, and I got it cost me everything. It cost me my career. It cost me my absolutely everything, but I had to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But after a couple of years in it, you realize that for the most part, this is nonsense. These micro parties and all this kind of stuff. It's not that people don't have good intentions. They quite literally just don't have the personality, the ability, or the finances, and that is just it. That's just the reality. That they're the three things you need. You need ability, you need personality, and you need finances to run in politics.
I'd say of all that, I'd say competency is the most important part. You need to have the brain, and you look at them and you ask yourself two questions, and this goes to all politicians, but especially them. Would you buy a second-hand car off them? And would you let them mind your children where you went away for a number of hours and know they were safe in their care? If you can answer yes to those questions, they're fairly okay people. If you say no, well, you know what the bloody answer is, you know.
So I'd be leaning towards. I'm a member of another political party at the minute, but it's stuck in limbo with the ELC stuff. But as soon as that is resolved, I will quite probably just endorse Independent Ireland and offer my services if they so want in the Kerry region that I'm living. If you want somebody to do a bit of canvassing, want a hand or anything like that. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect. Are they? They're not even 75% of what I would actually be looking for. But I have this thing about productivity and being pragmatic. And if you want a solution that I could never sell my own personal political views, because I'm actually libertarian at heart, not a nationalist. I believe in 100% self-responsibility, as in you don't need government. You don't. Just leave me alone. I'll be fine. I don't want anything from you. Leave me be. Don't be annoying me.
And if I fuck up, I own it.
Exactly. You know what I mean? I feed myself. I look after myself. I don't use your systems. I don't need your hospitals. I don't need anything from you. Right? Stop stealing from me, please. Stop taking on my money. You know what I mean? But just leave me be, and I'll be fine. And like I said, that's I lived my whole life like that. I kept up my end of the social contract. So in the event, right, let's just say there's elections coming up, there's local elections, we'll have I suppose people don't understand really, or may not understand how the councils work, that a lot of EU legislation has been completely it bypasses Dáil and it goes straight to the councils. They get their set of instructions, you're told to implement this, that, and the other. What are your thoughts on the EU and our membership?
Not good. I see, for example, we'll take one narrow sector. We're an island. In this island, we get 10% of the catch in regard to fish. There are boats down in Castletown Bay. I'd be from Bantry. I would have worked on boats when I was young. I would have worked on the mussels in Bantry Bay, as well, on the rafts out there in the bay and in the factory. Our boats are allowed to fish for approximately 2 months of the year, but the bank loan for the boats is 12 months a year. The maintenance for the boats is 12 months a year. We have a situation, for example, down below in Castletown Bay, where there is a Spanish-built and owned ice plant. There are Spanish trucks going down to Castletown Bay. They are loading fish, cut off Spanish boats, and boats under Irish flags of convenience. They are barreling those trucks straight up to Glengariff. How a child hasn't been knocked down in Glengariff over the years, I don't know. And straight off to the ferry and head down to Spain to sell the fish. We have boats from other EU nations taking our catches. And you would think that, given that we have sovereignty, but maybe, of course, I believe in the old version of sovereignty and not Micheál Martin's version of sovereignty, which he said in the Dáil but never told us what it was. Basically it's our fish, so let us fish for it, and do so sustainably as well, because we're the amount of stuff being caught, even we'd say sprat. There's in-bay fishing now for sprat, which is turned into fish meal and fish oil for animal feed and stuff like that. Those fish, that sprat, is one of the fundamental building blocks of the food chain for the prey fish, which we then go on to eat, and be it cod, whiting, what have you. And that is being absolutely decimated at the moment. Other things then, again, mariculture, right. You have Bantry Bay. they had to fight the industrial harvesting of kelp forests there. And basically, the way it would be harvested, it would leave the sea floor barren. And you just can't do this to your environment. They're now facing it up in Galway if they want to do it. You go into natural resources off our sea. You have the Corrib gas field given to Shell, virtually given away. The protesters, everything was enforced by Gardaí. Again, here we go, like the crash and what have you. You have Barry Row mothballed, and the technology is quite available to make Barry Row quite exploitable, no problem. It's basically crude that you just need to warm the pipes as it comes up, and then get it up. We even had, when we were in Whitegate, one thing everybody has kind of forgotten was when Fianna Fáil sold off the family silver. Whitegate was the state refinery. Whitegate was the state refinery. Whiddy Island in Bantry Bay was owned by Gulf, but it was where all the oil from mostly America at the time landed in, was taken off the tankers and then transferred by tanker up to Whitegate. And we were virtually self-sufficient for diesel and petrol in this country. And then Fianna Fáil sold it off. And then Gulf now is on Gulf have left since Whiddy, and it's on now basically a strategic reserve where they hold 90 days worth of oil. I think they were also supposed to be holding oil in fines, but they don't now. And that was uncovered by a person who's kind of like a citizen journalist. So our oil security, while we could be quite oil secure, because of the fact that Barry Row exists, it's mothballed by virtue of the policies and beliefs of a previous Green Minister for the Environment. And that Green Minister for the Environment gladly trotted off the stage, and is now enjoying his pension. And the decisions that he's made are now bed in stone, and now we're starting to pay for things. People forget that when you do things yesterday, they're going to have implications today, and they're going to have implications down the road tomorrow. There's no real joined up long-term thinking here. None whatsoever. We don't have a proactive government. We have a reactive government. And from the reactive part, as I would have seen in Dublin on that Friday when I made my speech, I was actually been in Boswell's Hotel and looked out the smoking entrance at the corner of the hotel and looked up Kildare Street, and I would have seen about 30 or 40 public order units just waiting there. And I was going, oh, sorry lads, you're not there for fun. You're not there for fun. And I see a state that doesn't care, that doesn't plan, that doesn't really look at things ahead. We both touched on digital IDs and the AI bill earlier, and I think it comes back to competency. They don't have the competency to actually realize what should be done. And what people forget is when you vote for the local bullock in a shirt, the local bullock in a shirt becomes part of a party mechanism. We say for the Fianna Fáil example, and he bends the knee to that party. He takes the party whip. So the party becomes first. The leader is the party, depending on the leader's personality. Either the party is first and the leader is second, or they have this weird symbiotic conjoined relationship where they're first and second simultaneously. Then you have the TD's own priority is simply from the very first day he's elected to get re-elected. So at best, the electorate themselves and their concerns and the concerns of the voters who directly elected him is a very poor fourth, if not fifth, and that is the story of Ireland. That is our system.
I give you the magic stick. How are you going to fix it?
Oh, how are we going to fix it? Oh God, I wish we had recall. I wish we had recall. That if you elected anybody from a councillor up, that if they didn't do what was supposed to be done, and people were unhappy, that literally there could be a petition which would invoke a process whereby they could be recalled. In the civil service, look at Robert Watt. He's left the Department of the Taoiseach, which he served through from kind of Enda Kenny's time out. And he's gone off now to some quango for Dublin to, invoke and fantastic new economy for Dublin, of which nothing has been done in the Dublin Task Force, but hey-ho, people like civil servants, they really, once they get to upper levels, they become like professors in universities where they get security of tenure.
Yeah.
And we know what that means. That means that no matter what that professor says, no matter how off the ball he goes for the rest of his life, or if he starts spouting stuff that all his lads inside in the class are learning from him, should be wearing tin hats and tinfoil hats, that he's still left there. And we have the same in the civil service. There has to be real responsibility. And when people make decisions, there has to be real accountability. If I fucked up in a job, when I'm a PAYE, PRSI worker, well, PAYE, PRSI and USC, I can be given my P45.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. That's, like you said, the social contract. The employee has rights and responsibilities. The employer has rights and responsibilities. If the employee doesn't actually play ball by that, and justifiably should be left go, then fair enough. Actions have consequences. But politically in this system, that's there, and administratively in the civil service, there isn't. And I'm sorry, the magic stick, PJ would be knocking out P45s like there was no tomorrow. And I would, if I had my magic way, I'd disbar Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, every single part of them down to the local common party structure, every single person that was involved. I wouldn't let them within ass's roar of even something as innocuous as a Tidy Towns Committee. And hopefully the real people would come forward. And I would wish at some stage that politically, that there might be a government of national unity where competent people will be put into the roles that they have competency for. I mean, we had Leo. Leo leaked a confidential medical agreement, the GP's contract, to a rival organisation. If he was in the private sector, that would be called corporate espionage. Okay, and it would have its due process under law, and Leo would not be sitting in a podcast last week telling us about how all of us living in rural Ireland are sucking off the nipple of urban Ireland. Leo would be in Mount Choi.
Explain this.
In a single cell.
Whenever this individual comes up, now I've met this man and I've seen him in person. I despise. I don't mind saying this. I despise every fiber of his being. I hate the man. I hate him as much as I hate Micheál Martin, and I mean hate. I hate these people for what they've done.
Oh, you're talking about Leo, are you?
I'm talking. There's a few more on the list, but Leo especially.
What?
How did an Indian gay man become the leader of what would have been the furthest right-leaning political party the state has ever known? No one's been able to explain this to me. Now, I know he's a global WF young leader, etc. Jacinda Ardern. Yep. I know the globalist playbook. How did smart, rural Irish people vote?
Do you remember the divorce referendum?
Yes.
Do you remember, you would have probably done analysis on this in your time in politics and research and looking at history and that, the demographic of the vote for the divorce referendum and the abortion referendums together.
Yeah.
There was
an
absolutely massive student vote in both of those referendums that pushed them over the line, where they both got involved with the campaign, because it there was fierce interactions between the student body and student unions on both those issues. And, I hold my hands up. I declared I was a student union president, which I was in Cork RTC 91-92. And there was a massive student body interaction on those issues. And we saw what happened. Those things passed, and we all heralded it in our youth as Ireland is becoming more modern. And those people grew up. And that's how it ended up that we got Leo Varadkar in, being the person that he is, of the character that he is, and the sexuality that he is, as a leader. And actually, what you must realise was, in Leo's end days, Leo made more conciliatory sounding toward unification on this island of North and South than Micheál Martin did. And Micheál Martin, remember, is the leader of Fianna Fáil, and what's their byword underneath, which they now don't like you to say, Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party.
Party, yeah.
And those kids grew up, and if you want to know how Leo got in there, there you go. They always say it's an inevitability of growing older. You get more right wing as you grow older.
That's the question I'm asking. That was the question I was going to ask you, because everybody starts on the left. We were all teenagers, and then we're all in college, and and we're all hippy dippy, free love, and then you get a mortgage and you realize, holy shit. Or you get some sort of debt, or you get some sort of rude awakening, and you kind of go, Jesus, actually, no, this is nonsense. We need conservative economic policies to ensure that interest rates stay fucking payable, and I can pay my bills, and I can live a life, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Locking younger has locking younger generations. Yes, but an entire generation has been locked out of fiscal responsibility because they're unable to get onto the property ladder. Is that stagnating their ability to grow? You don't have to be right wing to be conservative. Conservatism is just being a bit sensible. Yeah.
Well, look, Irish socialism is a particular kind of Irish socialism. There are elements from the left and there are elements from the right. In that regard, James Connolly would have been said, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, and you have to have fiscal responsibility. So there are certain conservative parts that you have to have. But what I think is infuriating the youth of this country and causing them to leave is, for example, this year, we see that there could be a 9.2 billion surplus. And what will probably happen is it'll probably be about 11. Up to 11, we'll say. And those kids are still at home and can't afford a place to live. And they look at even the social housing schemes. And it's like we say for Cork Corporation or Cork County Council, if you earn over 34 and a half, you can't get on the housing list to actually even get a county council or corporation house. And they see the system being so fundamentally just broken and so behind date in some ways that the best place that they can make a life is by leaving here. And I wouldn't blame them. I really, at this stage, I used to get angry. I used to be saying to people that left after 2008, yeah, you left to keep yourself in the style you were accustomed for, because those all life funds didn't buy themselves, did they? You know? But now, in the most recent years, people are leaving because, and I cannot disagree with them, people are leaving because the quality of life in this country has gone so far down. The fact that when you're in the small third bedroom in the house, where previously Star Wars posters hung when you were a young fella, and now literally you can look at the paint and see where the marks of the sellotape still were, you know, even though it's been repainted 3 and 4 times, and you're trying to save money, but the prices are rising for a house faster than you can ever save. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, I mean, the two you can't look. You don't have privacy and dignity to even express yourself sexually, because the male is living in the dad's, the mother and father's house. If he goes to her house, she's probably living at home. And he's thinking to himself, if I try anything here, Daddy's going to get off the chair and he's going to kick my ass up and down the road. But I mean, the mental health quality for kids these days is atrocious. So I wouldn't blame them for leaving, you know. And we often, myself, a friend of mine brought this up to me. He said, if farming was so profitable, why did so many farmers' children go into third level education and become qualified nurses, teachers, engineers, computer tech, you know, in the computing IT field and stuff like that? And then why did they go to all the corners of the world? Why didn't they stay home on the family farm? The farmer ended up trying to get massive loans out. Simon Coveney told us when the milk quotas went, expand, expand, expand. And herds went from 60 to 180 cattle. Milking parlours had to be demolished and rebuilt. In came robotic milking systems. In came fellas leasing land for grass and then paying contractors to harvest it because, practically speaking, they couldn't do it in time. And they started taking out loans for all this stuff. And now the one son who's left at home is facing he's looking over a pit. I don't mean a silage pit, I mean a functional pit, where he's looking into the pit, where he's going, oh Jesus, I am expected to pay retail for everything, but sell wholesale. And I can't do it. You know, and we're creating a system, we have a total dysfunctional system in this country that needs to be corrected. As I just said, if for no other reason, mental health. It has to be done because people are not living now. People are existing, and existence is not living.
I'm rural. I was raised rural. My house is rural. I don't live in Tipperary. I spent most of my time in Tipperary, but I'm back in Kerry now. It's easy for me to go, do you know what? I'm stepping out of this. I'm off grid. I like I said, I do loads of outdoor stuff. I do shooting. I do this, that, the other. I can hunt. I love just traipsing off for a weekend and just sticking up a tent and living in the forest for a few days, not washing and just doing. Yeah, that's it. It's easy for me. Like I said, I can just step away from the whole lot of it, and I don't need. And I'm set enough in life. My kids are reared. I don't have many worries. It's easy for me to just go, no, I'm not doing this anymore. You're stuck in an apartment in a city. Or even a large town. Yeah. Like, how do we convince people like that there is a better way?
There's a guy.
How do I convince somebody living in a shoebox? Yeah.
There's a guy down in West Cork. His name is Andrew Desmond, and he started this movement, Be Undeniable. Now, this is just for fellas, so I'll just take one sec, fellas. And he had found, because of rural isolation, the scourge of suicide, poor mental health services, which I can speak from practically because I attend mental health services as an outpatient in North Cork, where I am, that they're not fit for purpose. And he started up a movement called Be Undeniable, where it was like a men's shed, but it was literally just come on. Just come on, just tell your story, you know, talk if you want to talk, don't talk if you don't want to talk. But we're going to do social things. They were out last weekend, for example. They got 2 boats. They went camping off to John Manus Bay, I presume one of the islands. And they went off camping and brought, I presuppose, barbecues and timber with them, and, you know, had that for the movement. And I think something like that needs to be done in urban centres as well, because no man is an island, but a lot of people feel alone these days, and there has to be. They used to have it before, the ICA for women, you know, the Legion of Mary, different things like that in Ireland, you know, of the years past, but they were social interactions, be they through religious means or whatever, but it brought people together. And that's what's lacking now. A very funny thing. A very funny thing. What's one of the largest practical meeting forums for females in this country now? That is profitable. Bet you can't guess.
I would say the gym. Is it the?
No.
No.
DIY courses for women, where lads, this enterprising lad takes out a hall, and there's a lad by me doing it, and he started doing it, and fair dues to him, it's fantastic. He gets out a hall, and he actually gets the materials needed, and the scenario creates mock-up scenarios, teaching women how to wire plugs. We'd say if the handle of a door, if the door is opened too fast in anger and it goes into the plasterboard, how you'll fix that, how you'll clear drains, if you have a blocked toilet, how you'll clear it. Simple things that I was brought up with and taught by my father and my mother and stuff like that. But this is actually a growth sector in the country now. Now, you really have to look at that, right? That's normal adult cop-on. That's what I call it. But there's guys making a profit out of actually teaching that to people. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that while people are book smart and education smart, they're not street smart. And, when you have that disconnect where people feel so alone, and like you said, in the apartments in the city, they're finished their work at 8, 9 o'clock. They probably were supposed to finish at 5 or 6, but they stay on. And why do they stay on? Because what's the other option? And if you show effort, maybe you might get a promotion for it. So they'll stay the extra hour, 2 hours later, and stuff like that. But when they go home, what are they going home to? Get dressed up, go out, get yourself into a cycle of, consuming alcohol and partying and stuff like that. Or sometimes that doesn't lead into good places. And that's the reality of it. But there's no social backup system in this country, seriously, for young people. I really don't see it. You have it for kids, you have coding clubs and Lego clubs, and it really does challenge kids and channel them and open their brains to stuff. But then you come to 18, bang, you're an adult, you get the vote now, you're a big boy, you're a big girl, and all life is ahead of you, and you're in charge of stuff. But most 18-year-olds now are not. They're not like 18-year-olds when I grew up. We were self-sufficient. I've a library in my workshop, and in that library, if everything gave up tomorrow, basically your man, that's my good buddy and myself, he's Aaron's last tinker, and he's literally a master engineer. This guy is something else, like master welder, doctorate in engineering, mechanical engineering. He will build you a steam engine or a stationary engine. He'll build you a house, and he'll renovate a house. If everything broke down tomorrow, we would have great fun, because we'd go into my workshop, strap on a couple of machetes, and start getting the last stuff out of Lidl and out of the chemist. And the library that we have is basically how to rebuild everything.
Do you know what's terrible? I don't like getting that close, so it won't be machetes. But I have my deer bow, and I have a couple of rifles. So,
I have a deer bow as well, because it's quiet. Because you can take 2 shots with a bow, and nobody knows where you are. You take 1 shot with a rifle, and by the second, everyone knows where you are. Yeah. Nice. What's yours? I have a 75-pound compound. Yeah.
What you got? It? So 70 pounds. Yeah. But I'll be honest. Look, it's a fantastic hobby. It's a really. I've actually, even through talking to people, I've actually met an awful lot of people that actually use archery as their centering tool. You know what I mean? You're calm and you get your breathing right and get your shot.
My cousin actually teaches she teaches the coaches that teach archery around the country. She's living in Kerry, so shout out if she's watching, if she gets to watch this, shout out to my cousin Clodagh. from Unreacht Archery Club in Tralee, and she also fishes for Ireland in sea fishing. So
Right.
we're kind of
That's
like a
interesting.
renaissance, well, a
I might,
renaissance family. But as she,
I might look her up. That's literally about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So
there you go.
you
As
know.
she says herself, all our family fell out of the autistic tree. She said, "You just happened to break a few more branches on the way down, PJ, than the most of them." But all our family is like that. We're doers. We're doers and fixers and makers and stuff like that. And that's what needs to be more of in this country. And there needs to be more respect for it in that regard. And it needs to be taught as well. It needs to be taught. There's actually more blacksmiths in Eric O'Neill runs a blacksmithing course in Capmore in County Limerick. It's a 1-year course foundation. And after that, you have to go to Hereford to finish. But he takes on 15 people per year. And fair dues to him. He's built this from the ground up. It is a fully funded course by the Further Education Training Board in Limerick. 15 people a year. There were 15 apprentice blacksmiths taken on in this country between 1985 and 2000. He has single-handedly reversed the death of blacksmithing to the point where now, okay, 90% of blacksmiths are part-time, but it is their therapy and they produce beautiful things. We're more functional in what we do. We get asked what we do, and actually we tell the person, well, it depends. It's actually what we don't do. But he took a step and a stand like that and literally reversed what was going to be the cliff edge of a craft and brought it back. There's woodworking. You have Owen O'Riordan. You see him on TikTok and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's very good. Yeah.
Owen grew up when he was a young fella going to Upton Steam Rally and looking at my buddy, and he'd be doing pole lading. This is the engineering guy.
Yeah.
And he'd be tinkering and he'd be pole lading. Owen was doing a commerce course in UCC because his mother and father are accountants. So it kind of made sense to do what Mammy and Daddy did. During COVID, it shut down and he took the jump into woodworking and started teaching himself. And now he's pretty damn complicated. Now my buddy calls him the mushroom because he popped up yesterday and thinks he knows everything. But there you go. Everyone's opinions are like arseholes. Everyone is.
No. A seasoned worker will always look down at the guy and say, "Have you served your time? Have you served your time? Have you served your time?" It's as simple as that. Have you endured the hardship?
But he's actually opened up woodworking and even kind of carving and stuff like that, carpentry and joinery to people who never would have experienced it before. But then it's up to those people, we'd say, to get the tools themselves, get the facilities and the place themselves to do it. Now, if we had a nationwide system where that was actually supported in schools, and if we had a social system, much like the YMCAs and stuff like that, where this was in every town in Ireland, people talk about the men's sheds and stuff like that. And my experience of men's sheds is they're kind of rather directionless at times. There's minutes of frantic activity followed by hours of tea, and you have to have balance on these things. But if that was for young people in every town around the place, within easy reach of them, to be able to teach with them how to work with their hands after they've had their day's work, be it tippy-tappy, that then they're going into that side. It not alone teaches them a skill, but it's also therapy and it's fantastic for the mind. And there is a girl, Quiva Wynn, she qualified last year in Limerick at blacksmithing, and Quiva's doing some fantastic stuff. So this is not just guys, and she's wanting to go down the road of being a farrier, but also being a sculptural blacksmith. This can be done. This can be done. It doesn't take miraculous thinking. It just takes realistic thinking, and it takes a budget. But we have 9.2 billion.
Did you ever hear of James Conway and Conway's farm up in Sligo? you ever come
I do.
across him?
I do. I haven't met the man, but I've heard of him and I've seen stuff and that. And he has he now has a market up there, and people can go up there, and he provides the facilities. He provides the venue. He has the approach of build it and they will come.
That's So it's basically that model that you need. And I've spent some time up there, and I know this quite well. But if you have that in every county, and literally it's just, unfortunately, you need somebody with a small bit of land where you can have a bit of fun, a bit of space to set up things and have your festivals and have
a community
your
garden,
tradesmen.
have polytunnels,
yeah,
have workshops, and that because there is Feroiga for kids, and that's through sport, and that's very good. And they do things like camping and stuff like that. But that's rather narrow. It does well in what it does, and that's very good. But more can be done.
But you see, if you have the venue and you have the space and someone will to host it, you can do so much, because it doesn't have to be just trades. You can have your bloody medieval festivals. You can have your old traditional Irish stuff. You can have I don't know. You remember back in the day, you'd have the old Donkey Derby days and all that kind of stuff. The local carry on and mess and stuff. I'm sure
like the local festival. Every town used to have a week festival in the summer. Where are they gone? They're drying out. This seems slightly ludicrous, right? And you kind of laugh at it in a way, but it's tragedy. But we were contacted last year by the West Cork Travellers group in Clonakilty, and we had a great old chat with them, and they asked us, would we go down and teach them blacksmithing? And I said, yeah, we can. No problem. We did. We were willing to do that, because these lads, I know how marginalised they are, and I just look at a fella and I see the same as myself: 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, and that's the way I look at it. And we went down there, and in the intervening time before we started, I was talking to Toddy, who was the facilitator down below there. And I said, Toddy, you do realise, I said, the guy that I do this stuff with, I said, he's actually a Sumi Finn. I said, born in the subarctic in a yurt, family-minded reindeer, travelled from place to place. So officially, ethnically, to the Finns, he is a traveller. Okay, yeah, and what the relevance of that? I said, after Mongan and Donnelly died, who he learned off of, I said, he's officially Ireland's last tinker. And I literally could feel her eyes bugging out of her head over the phone. He's what? I said, he's a coppersmith and a tinker. And while we were down there, we weren't just teaching them blacksmithing, but we were teaching the travellers tinkering, their own trade of the hundreds of years, to them, to young fellas, because while they'd heard their fathers and their grandfathers doing it, and they would have turned around and said, oh, well, my uncle has the tinsmith's anvil at home, and he has the hammers and stuff like that, but you're there in the shed, because they'd settled at this stage. And I was saying to them, well, why don't you take them out? I said, why don't you ask a plumber for an immersion tank? I said, that's what they used to do, was they used to use immersion tanks. I said, and use an angle grinder to cut it up. I said, and then just cut, the cylinder, cut a line along it, open it out, and you've got a sheet of copper. I said, that's what your uncles, your fathers, and your grandfathers used to make buckets and stuff, jugs out of, before the advent of plastic. And we ended up teaching them their own trade. Now, it's fantastic that we're teaching that. It's fantastic that we're keeping it alive in our own little way. But it's also tragic in the fact that it took a Sumi Finn, who's born outside this country, to actually learn from the travellers that were there, to where there's literally him and kind of 2 guys more that have knowledge of it, but don't do it anymore now, because otherwise, this is going to die out. And I mean, this is the pace of modern Ireland. These are the things that were forgotten in the rush, in the acquisition for wealth, and judge a man by his bank account. These are some of the things that fell by the wayside.
Okay, we're after hitting the hour and a half mark. I always wrap it up. I'm time is the most important commodity as far as I'm concerned, because none of us know how much of it we're getting.
Yeah.
So I keep it to about an hour and a half.
Yep.
I always try to finish on a positive. So tell me something hopeful. Tell me where you see something good, something hopeful, something that's gonna make our lives better, or something to that effect, so people can leave with a smile on their face.
Jesus Christ. Sometimes it's kind of a bit of a shit sandwich where it's bad news, good news, bad news. Like, let me see. One thing I have seen, for example, that I took away from Whitegate when that 14-year-old child was pepper sprayed, he was back in Cork the next day. I have opened my eyes more to the youth of this country in recent months, and listened to them. And they are firmly capable of being a generation into the future who can sort this country out. I want us, the older ones now, to create that for them. I want us to create that for them so that they don't face the choices. We say the young lads of 12 and 14 don't face the choices of, like your fella at 26, because a generation now is only about 10 years because of technology and everything. I think they have the capability and the competency to grow into the compassionate individuals that this country needs. I think that we need to take accountability to build what is necessary for them to take it over and make it better. And that's a fairly big thing for us to do. But if we don't, this system is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I think we need to really just say, we need to have a light bulb moment and just go, lads, money ain't everything. Money ain't everything. Quality of life is more. And it's like, about land. You only steward land. It passes through generations and that. And there must be heritage. We must start rebuilding heritage. We must almost start having a new Celtic revival movement, as was done in the early 20th century. I think that needs to be done. And I think it needs to be done holistically. Teaching people skills, teaching them the tools of resiliency for themselves to be able to stand up and have the courage to speak and actually say what they feel. Because, you can either run things in the same way and beat your head off a brick wall, but as Einstein said, all you'll get off of it is a migraine. We need to start change. And just us talking here, we're just two people. But if 2,000 people see this and it affects 10% of them, and 10% of that 10% do something practical to make things different. All I know is that if you try, you may fail, but you may succeed. If you do not try, you are doomed to failure. I see that the Irish youth of this country have the ability and the competency and the education. And I also see they have a bit of a spine now as well. That if they can bring that into play, that things will get better. I have hope for them. I really do. And I think it's the least we owe them, So there we go.
PJ, on that very, very positive note, I'm going to end it. Stay down in the green room. There's just a small intro that has to play, and but I'll be back to you in a second. Just to stay on.
No problem at all, Martin.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. And thank you to
very much for your
everybody
time.
who gave time this evening to watch this. Whenever you're watching it, you can be part of the problem or you can be part of the solution. It's very simple. Be part of the solution.
Well said. I'll talk to you in a minute. Another fantastic conversation in the books. We'll talk to you next time.